Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. I've got my first album from the 2019 crop presenting for you today. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's an album that I first introduced to you guys in my previews. I think the third episode of my previews in January. It's the album Põhja Konn by the band Põhja Konn. Põhja Konn is an Estonian band, and they get their name from I guess some Estonian folklore about a kind of a devil frog from the north or something like that. It's a kind of an involved story that I won't recount to you the whole thing right now. But I think that their name is important because there's one of the things it has made Põhja Konn so interesting to me is their sort of embracing of their Estonian identity. And I'm going to kind of touch back on that as we go on through this. But first, I want to give you a little bit of a clip. If you go back to that episode 3 preview that I gave you earlier this year, I had a video on there, a little video clip for a song called Magvala Sudva Est, I believe it's called. Again, it's all in a foreign language, so you'll forgive me if I don't quite nail the pronunciations and everything. But I still really stand by that clip. I love that one, and I would really go back and check it out if you get a chance. But I want to go ahead and in the spirit of, Põhja Konn, and sort of in the spirit of like old school MTV, when they used to have like the name of the band and the name of the song and the name of the album on the screen. I wanted to kind of give you this title track here. It's sort of in the spirit of the band Big Country, who had used to come on MTV going, Big Country? By Big Country? This is Big Country. This is Põhja Konn from the album Põhja Konn. When I first was talking about Põhja Konn in the preview, I know that I'd mentioned that one of my favorite kinds of progressive rock bands are ones that really aren't super like mainstream progressive rock, but ones that are kind of on the fringes. And I went through a phase when I was listening to Põhja Konn where I was very aware of their influences, and I was kind of like, maybe that first assessment wasn't quite right. Like that song right there definitely has a very close relationship to early Genesis. Now, I'm not talking about like the Abacab Genesis we were talking about last week. I'm talking about Peter Gabriel, like Foxtrot Genesis. For example, like this one. Get 'em out by Friday. You don't get paid till the last one's well on his way. I mean, you can kind of see the resemblance there between the Põhja Konn track and that song, Get 'Em Out by Friday. And again, I think this is probably one of Põhja Konn's older songs. We'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. But there were their influences on their sleeve a little bit in that song. They also, in their bio, they cite Gentle Giant as an influence, and I think that that's really fair. They have a very clear, kind of a festive use of complicated melody that certainly that is related to what Gentle Giant used to do. And also in their bio, they cite a band called Ruja, or Ruha, I guess. It's a band that I'd never heard of, but they were an Estonian psychedelic or / progressive rock band that was around in the 70s and 80s. And if you haven't listened to that band, you can hear kind of a resemblance in their music. Here's a very quick clip. Põhja Konn, what really kind of started making me interested in them was as I was reading up and finding out things about the band. was that they were actually on hiatus. They'd come in the early 2010s, I believe. They had formed and they were playing some gigs and they were pretty, doing okay. And then they went on hiatus. I don't know what the reason for that was. But then about, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago, a writers guild, an Estonian writers guild, contacted them about setting some poems to music. These were poems by this very well-known Estonian poet named Betty Alver, and it was on the occasion of her 110th birthday. So they were kind of asked to set these 8 poems to music. So they had apparently quite a bit of leeway in how they did that, and they did that. So those 8 songs, plus a lot of their older material that they'd never recorded before, were what went together to form the Põhja Konn, the full-length debut from the guy. So you really can't tell as you're listening to it stylistically, which song is which. It's very cohesive overall. The whole, again, this is another situation where if you like one of the songs or a part of one of these songs, you're pretty much going to like how the whole album works. I mean, I could go track by track and tell you what I like about each song, but generally speaking, the whole album is the same thing. It's all like this really great example of great musicians having a lot of fun playing music that challenges them. And that's one of my favorite things. It's like what they have in a relationship like Spock's Beard. You listen to Spock's Beard, those guys definitely are having a blast playing what they're playing. And I think that's kind of like, these guys are almost like you'd say they're the Estonian Spock's Beard without all the fun vocal stuff. So, but their use of lyrics is of interest, especially since one of the things that brought them out of their hiatus was the fact that they were setting these poems to music. And this is where you kind of run up against a wall because, as I said in my preview, there's always that problem you're going to run up to whenever you start talking about foreign language music because, well, you can get a lot out of the music on its own and appreciate it and even kind of sing along with whatever kind of poorly pronounced Estonian you get from the album, but ultimately the meanings elude us because we don't speak Estonian. So, and because those poems are kind of what brought them out of their hiatus, I kind of feel like it was important. So I kind of went the extra mile on this one, and so you'll have to forgive me on this next bit, but it was kind of a fun game to play. I went and I took all the lyrics for the whole album and I put them through Google Translate. Okay, now that's going to be problematic just to start with. Let's be honest, because we all know that just from what we've seen on Jimmy Kimmel, apparently, you can translate something and translate it back, and it may not even look the same. So, for example, just to kind of show you what kind of results you get, I took this and put it in Google Translate in Estonian and got this. Then I took that phrase and put it back in Google Translate, translated it back to English and got this. Now it's close. It's pretty much the same general idea, but things are starting to shift a little bit. After I did that about 3 or 4 times, about 3 or 4 generations of switching through it, it finally bottomed out with this phrase. So again, you can kind of get a general gist of what the poem originally said, but it's not exactly the same thing. So as you move forward through this next bit, I want you to keep that in mind because some of the lyrics that I got back from Google Translate were complete gibberish. It seemed real weird. And so some of it's going to seem kind of like, I'm not trying to make fun of the lyrics necessarily, but they are kind of funny if you think about how it came about, where they come from. So these lyrics are for entertainment value only, but they do kind of give you a general idea about what the topics of Põhja Konn were about. So for this next clip, I actually put these subtitled lyrics in there in part of the parts of one of the parts of the song where there's some lyrics. And if you put the title of this song into Google Translate, it's called "It's Without Boring Nudity." Okay, clearly there's some weird things going on with the lyrics, but again, there is a certain, you can kind of see that there's some poetry there. You might not know what they're saying exactly, but there's something about that that's interesting, that's intriguing. And as I went through and did the entire album and kind of browsed it to get some general ideas about what maybe the songs might be about, it was first of all, the topic wise, there was definitely a sense of Estonian identity with it. There was, lots of talk about beaches and lots of songs about boating and things like that. And sure enough, if you look up Estonia, it's like, mostly seaboard with like 2,000 islands, I think, are involved off the coast. So being at sea or on the beach is not an alien concept to, I guess, the average Estonian. Certainly less so than it would be to a landlocked Texan like myself. I mean, going to the beach for me is a unique experience. I don't get to do that every day. And there's another song on there towards the end where and this is even a Betty Alver song. This is one of the songs made by the band where they're talking about, I saw Estonia in a dream and all these, so there's definitely that sense that there's a sense of pride in being Estonian. And, that the choice to sing in that native language and express themselves in that language, I think is important. It shouldn't be overlooked and not thrown aside either. So again, my attempts to try to get an idea of what the album is about by looking at Google Translate is probably pales in comparison. I mean, we all know that there's problems with translation, the Google Translate there's no way it can pick up things like, colloquialisms, and surely poetry would be more apt to use that sort of thing. So again, my whole thing with the lyrics in this album are kind of a shot in the dark, but musically, regardless, the music is extremely strong on the album. And even though I don't have a really clear idea about specifically what the lyrics are about, a lot of the topics of the album are very compelling and revealing about where the band is coming from. So there's a lot of depth here on Pohja Konn as an album that I'm really enjoying getting into, and that I'm going to probably continue to listen to. The more I listen to it, the more I enjoy it, and that's always a good sign. An album that reveals itself upon further listening, has layers to it, is the ones that end up in the long run being the best albums in my opinion. So I would highly suggest you go out and check out Pohja Konn on your own. They've got several clips up on YouTube of them, almost all of them playing live, and they're extremely compelling. Their live shows are just phenomenal. A lot of really great playing. The singing is good. So I would definitely go check that out, and then go buy the album. It's on Bandcamp. I bought the CD. The album art is great. It's got this cool woodcut look to it that I don't think anything in almost my entire CD collection has anything that looks quite like that album cover. And that was another, again, the usual selling point. So get the album, at least check it out, get the album, and support the band if you can. So Pohja Konn, 4 thumbs up. If I had more hands, I'd give it more thumbs up. Worth checking out. Before I go, I got a couple other real quick things I wanted to pass on. I got good spring break. Good news, it's spring break. So I got a couple new spring break albums, and they're just going to be quick previews. I'm not going to go into it too far, but I want to let you know that they're in rotation now. I got the Black Panther soundtrack. I've kind of been resisting this one for a while because I kept on hoping it would come out in a CD hard copy. It never did. So I finally got the soft copy on it, and it is as good as I remember from whenever I was listening to it in the movie, when I saw the movie. Marvel, you heard me talk a little bit before about Marvel soundtracks are kind of hit or miss. This one's a bit more of a hit. Again, it's going to take a little more listening to really take it apart, but it's definitely unique. And it's got to tread on some tricky water because it's trying to set itself in an African setting. And dealing with Africanisms in music is always kind of a sketchy thing. So, but it seems like it's done at least with some sort of sensitivity, if nothing else. We'll see as I go along with it, but that's out there. And also just today, I started checking out the new Les Claypool, Sean Lennon collaboration, South of Reality. Monolith of Phobos was a pretty big favorite a couple years ago, right whenever I was moving up to this area. I was in the car back and forth quite a lot. I made a post about that in the blog. So we'll see if this one follows it up well. Initially, it seems, just to be fair, it seems a little forced. We'll see. in the long run, it may turn out to be different than that. But I'm so into the Põhja Konn right now. It seems so natural and so honest that maybe I'm being a little bit hypercritical of it at this point. So we'll see. Anyway, that's what I got for you today, guys. I appreciate you spending the time with me. Subscribe if you want notifications. Like the video. Share it. And, check out new music. If you have anything you'd like to suggest to me, please bring it on. I welcome it. All right. So thanks a lot, and I'll check you guys on the flip side. Take care.